Maylord or bride said nothing, but her silence spoke loudly to the town. The driver stepped down first, stretching his legs, then reached inside and handed out one small suitcase. The woman followed slowly. She was not tall, not short, not striking in any clear way, but something about her made people look twice. She stood still for a moment as if unsure whether to step forward or back, then walked down the steps and onto the gravel road. No one heard her voice. She wore a plain coat, too thin for the cold, and held her suitcase with both hands, like it might disappear if she let go. Her eyes moved carefully over the town, over the old post office, the closed cafe, the two men standing near the feed store pretending not to stare. Red Hollow was small enough that everyone knew when something changed, and today, something clearly had. Her husband was waiting near his truck. His name was Samuel Crow. Most people just called him Sam. He was a widower, quiet himself, known more for his hard work than his words. He tipped his hat when he saw her, unsure what to do next. They had exchanged letters for months. Or rather, he had written and she had replied in short, careful sentences. He had never heard her voice either. He said her name softly, testing it in the air. She looked at him and nodded. That was all. Sam picked up the suitcase without asking and placed it in the back of the truck. He opened the passenger door for her. She climbed in, smoothing her skirt, her movements neat and controlled. When he asked if she was cold, she nodded again. When he asked if she was tired, another nod. He waited for more, but nothing came. As the truck drove through town, eyes followed them. People pretended to fix fences, check windows, or tie their shoes, but everyone was watching. A Maylord bride was not common, but it was not unheard of either. What made this different was the silence. Most brides arrived nervous but talkative, trying too hard to please. This woman said nothing at all. By the time they reached Sam's farm, stories had already started forming. Some said she did not speak English well. Others said she was unhappy with the marriage already. A few whispered that she might be hiding something. In a town like Red Hollow, where life moved slowly, mystery was rare and quickly filled with guesses. The farmhouse stood alone at the edge of open land, worn but clean. Sam showed her inside. He pointed out the kitchen, the bedroom, the small sitting room. She followed, listening closely, her eyes taking in every detail. When he asked if she needed anything, she shook her head. That first night, she unpacked quietly. She placed her clothes neatly in the drawer, folded with care. She set her shoes by the door. She washed her hands longer than necessary, as if grounding herself in the moment. When Sam offered dinner, she sat across from him and ate slowly, politely. She thanked him in a soft voice, just 2 words. It surprised him enough that he looked up sharply, but by then she was already focused on her plate again. The sound of her voice lingered longer than the words themselves. In town, people talked. At the general store the next day, Mrs. Halden said she had never seen a bride so quiet. At the church steps, someone said silence was never a good sign. Another person said maybe the woman thought she was better than them. No one said these things with cruelty exactly, but curiosity can turn sharp without meaning to. When the woman finally came into town a few days later, it felt like an event. She walked beside Sam, half a step behind him, her hands folded in front of her. People smiled at her, waiting. She smiled back, small and polite. When spoken to, she nodded. Sometimes she said yes or thank you, but never more. Her accent was light, hard to place. Her voice was gentle, almost careful. Children noticed first. They watched her closely, puzzled by her quiet. One child waved at her. She waved back just as carefully. At the market, she paid exact change without counting twice. At the bakery, she pointed instead of asking. The baker raised his eyebrows but said nothing. When someone joked about the weather, she smiled as if she understood, even if she did not. People began to feel uneasy. Red Hollow was the kind of place where people filled silence quickly. Words were how they measured honesty, friendliness, trust. Without them, they felt unsure. Some tried harder to make her talk, asking questions about where she came from, what she liked, what she thought of the town. She answered with short phrases or nods. Others stopped trying altogether. At home, Sam did not push her. He noticed things instead. How she woke early, even before him. How she cleaned the house not because it was dirty, but because it gave her something to do. How she stood at the window in the evenings, watching the road as if expecting nothing and everything at once. He wondered what she was thinking, but he did not ask. The town continued to watch. Silence, after all, makes people uncomfortable because it gives them space to hear their own thoughts. And in Red Hollow, those thoughts grew louder with each passing day. Some felt pity. Some felt distrust. Some felt strangely challenged, as if her quiet was a mirror showing how loud they had always been. But the woman kept moving forward, one careful step at a time, carrying her silence like something precious. She did not know yet that the town was listening, even if it did not understand what it was hearing. Life settled into a quiet pattern after her arrival, though nothing truly felt settled. Days passed, marked by chores, meals, and long stretches of silence that filled the farmhouse like invisible fog. From the outside, Sam's house looked the same as it always had. The fields were worked, the fence repaired, the animals fed on time. But inside, everything felt new and unsure. She learned the house quickly. She learned which floorboard creaked, which cupboard door needed an extra push, how long the stove took to heat. She learned Sam's habits too, how he paused before speaking, how he sat at the table even after finishing his meal, how he checked the locks twice before bed. They shared the same space, but often felt like two people walking parallel paths. In the mornings, she rose early and prepared breakfast. She did not announce it was ready. She simply set the plates down and waited. Sam thanked her every time. Sometimes she answered, sometimes she just nodded. He tried not to let disappointment show when she stayed quiet, reminding himself that she had never promised to be any different. In town, people watched the marriage closely. They expected arguments, affection, laughter, something to point at and understand. But there was nothing dramatic to see. Sam and his wife walked together on Sundays, sat side by side at church, and left quietly when service ended. They did not hold hands. They did not avoid each other either. Mrs. Halden once whispered that it didn't seem like a real marriage at all. Another woman said maybe that was how love looked when it was arranged. No one truly knew. Sam noticed how people spoke around his wife. They slowed their words, raised their voices slightly, then grew awkward when she didn't respond much. Some took her silence as shyness. Others took it as distance. A few took it personally, as if she were choosing not to speak to them. At home, Sam sometimes tried to talk anyway. He spoke about the weather, the crops, small stories from town. She listened closely, her eyes steady on him. Sometimes she smiled at the right moment. Sometimes she asked a simple question that surprised him because he didn't expect it. When she did speak, her words were careful, as if each one mattered. He wanted to ask her about her past, about her family, about the life she left behind. But every time he thought of it, he stopped. He sensed that questions might close her off rather than open her up. So he waited. She spent afternoons sewing by the window. Her hands were skilled, moving without hesitation. She repaired clothes that did not need fixing, as if keeping busy helped her stay calm. When Sam worked outside, she sometimes watched from the porch, shading her eyes from the sun. She never called out to him. Still, he felt her presence. In town, her silence became a topic of its own. At the store, people began testing her in small ways. They made jokes, waited for her reaction. They asked open-ended questions and watched how she answered. When she stayed quiet, some laughed nervously. Others frowned. One man muttered that it was rude not to talk. Children grew bolder. They circled her like curious birds, whispering and pointing. She never scolded them. When one child tripped and scraped a knee, she knelt beside him without a word, cleaned the wound, and tied a neat bandage. The child stopped crying almost instantly. That story spread too, though fewer people mentioned it. At church, she became a familiar figure in the back row. She bowed her head, sang softly or not at all, and left without lingering. Some women invited her to join their gatherings. She came once, sat quietly, and helped serve tea. She answered questions politely but briefly. The next time, fewer invitations came. What people did not see were the small moments that made up her days. The way she paused before opening doors. The way she flinched at sudden loud sounds. The way she relaxed only when everything was calm and predictable. Silence for her was not empty. It was safe. Sam noticed more than others. He noticed how she stiffened when voices rose, even in friendly conversation. He noticed how she seemed relieved when evenings were quiet. One night during a storm, thunder shook the house. She froze, her breath shallow, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Sam said nothing. He simply sat nearby until the storm passed. The marriage remained gentle, distant, and respectful. There were no harsh words, no raised voices, but there was also a space between them that neither knew how to cross. Sam wondered if he had asked too much of her by bringing her here. She wondered in her own quiet way if she would ever truly belong. The town's patience wore thin. Some people decided she must be unhappy. Others decided she must be ungrateful. A few decided she must be hiding something dark. When silence lasts too long, people fill it with their own fears. Still, life went on. Seasons shifted. The air grew colder. She adapted, layering clothes, learning the rhythms of farm life. She helped where she could, never complaining, never demanding more. Her silence did not fade, but it softened, becoming less strange and more like part of who she was. Sam realized one evening that he no longer waited for her to speak. He listened instead, to what she did, to how she moved, to how she chose kindness without words. The town had not learned that lesson yet, but slowly, without meaning to, she was teaching it. And though no one noticed it right away, the quiet marriage was already changing Red Hollow, one unspoken moment at a time. By the time winter settled over Red Hollow, the town had made up many stories about her. Some were spoken softly, others without care. Silence had turned into a shape people thought they understood. To many, her quiet ways no longer felt gentle or shy. They began to see it as weakness. People believed that someone who did not speak could not stand up for herself. They assumed she agreed with whatever was decided for her. They assumed she had nothing to say because nothing important lived inside her. These thoughts spread slowly but firmly, like frost creeping across glass. At the general store, conversation stopped when she entered. Not out of kindness, but out of discomfort. People did not know how to include her. Some spoke loudly, as if volume could pull words from her. Others ignored her completely. Neither felt right. Once, while waiting in line, a woman behind her muttered that it must be easy to be married when you never talk back. The words were meant to be a joke, but they landed heavy. She heard them. Her shoulders tightened for a brief moment, then relaxed. She did not turn around. She paid for her goods and left. Outside, cold air filled her lungs. She stood still for a moment, letting the quiet settle her again. Children, who once only watched her, began to test boundaries. They dared each other to ask her strange questions. They laughed when she answered with only a nod. One boy said she was like a ghost. Another said ghosts were scary. She smiled at them anyway, though the smile did not reach her eyes. At church, whispers followed her into the pew. People wondered why she never shared prayers aloud. They wondered why Sam spoke so little too, as if her silence had begun to affect him. Some even questioned if the marriage was proper at all. After all, how could two people build a life without words? Sam heard these things, though few said them directly to him. He felt a growing tension he did not know how to fix. He was not angry with his wife. He was not ashamed of her. But he was tired. Tired of explaining that quiet did not mean broken. Tired of defending something he himself was still learning to understand. At home, the silence grew heavier, not because it was unkind, but because it now carried the weight of the town's judgment. She sensed it too. She moved more carefully, spoke even less. It was as if drawing attention felt dangerous. There were moments when she wanted to explain herself. The words formed in her mind late at night, when the house was still. She imagined telling Sam about a past where speaking freely had not been safe. About lessons learned early, that quiet could protect you when nothing else could. But when morning came, those words stayed locked away. Old habits do not loosen easily. One afternoon, while Sam was in town, a neighbor stopped by the farm unannounced. He spoke kindly enough, but his questions felt sharp. He asked how she liked life here. He asked if she missed home. He asked why she never spoke much. She answered politely, briefly. Yes. Sometimes, it is fine. He frowned, clearly unsatisfied. He told her she should try harder to fit in, that people might think she did not care, that a town like Red Hollow valued openness. She listened. She nodded. When he left, she stood alone in the kitchen for a long time, staring at nothing. Her hands shook slightly as she washed the cups he had used. That night, Sam noticed she barely touched her food. He asked if something was wrong. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Finally, she said she was tired. It was not a lie, but it was not the whole truth either. Winter deepened. Snow piled against fences. Days shortened. People stayed indoors more, but talk did not stop. In fact, with less to do, it grew sharper. Silence, once again, gave people room to imagine. Someone said she must be afraid of something. Someone else said maybe she had something to hide. A few said Sam should have chosen better. These words drifted toward the farm like cold wind, slipping through cracks no one could seal. Sam tried to shield her, though he was unsure how. He began doing errands alone more often. He spoke less in town, saving his energy for home. But even there he felt helpless. He wanted to protect her without changing her. He wanted to understand without forcing her to explain. She, in turn, noticed his quiet frustration. She did small things to ease it. She packed his lunch more carefully. She waited up for him when he was late. She touched his arm lightly when passing by. These gestures were brief, but they carried meaning. Still, the town's view hardened. One evening, during a small gathering at the church hall, someone openly said that silence could not build trust. Heads nodded. No one mentioned her name, but everyone knew who they meant. She was there, standing near the door, holding a tray of cups. Her hands did not shake this time. Her face remained calm. She set the tray down and stepped outside into the cold. The night air was sharp and clean. Stars hung bright above the dark fields. She breathed slowly, steadying herself. Inside, laughter and voices continued, unaware or unconcerned that they had pushed her out. In that moment, her silence was not weakness. It was restraint. She had learned long ago that reacting could make things worse. That sometimes the strongest choice was to endure, to wait, to survive quietly. Red Hollow did not know this lesson yet. They only saw what they wanted to see. Sam found her outside a few minutes later. He did not ask questions. He simply stood beside her, sharing the cold. After a while, she leaned slightly toward him. He stayed still, letting the moment exist without words. The town continued to misunderstand her, but beneath the surface, something steady remained. Her silence was not empty. It was full of memory, caution, and strength shaped by experience. And though Red Hollow could not yet see it, that strength was preparing for a moment when quiet endurance would no longer be enough. When that moment came, silence would finally show its true power. The moment came quietly at first, like most things in Red Hollow. It began with a smell in the air, sharp and wrong, drifting across the fields just before dawn. A thin line of smoke rose where it did not belong. By the time the sun showed its pale edge, the sound of shouting broke the stillness of the town. A barn at the edge of Red Hollow was on fire. People ran from their houses, pulling on coats, calling to one another. The wind was strong that morning, pushing the flames faster than anyone expected. Dry wood cracked and popped, sparks flying into the sky. Animals inside the barn cried out, their sounds full of fear. Panic spread quickly, louder than the fire itself. Sam was already moving when he heard the alarm bell. He grabbed his coat and rushed outside. His wife followed without being told. She did not stop to ask what was happening. She did not wait for instructions. She moved with purpose, her face calm but focused. At the barn, chaos ruled. Men shouted orders over one another. Some tried to form a line with buckets, but no one agreed on where to start. Others froze, staring at the flames, unsure what to do next. The owner of the barn stood nearby, shaking, his voice breaking as he called out the names of the animals trapped inside. She did not speak, but she acted. She ran to the well without hesitation, grabbing buckets and pushing them into people's hands. She pointed, guiding them into a proper line. When someone dropped a bucket, she picked it up and placed it back where it belonged. Her eyes missed nothing. Her movements were quick, steady, sure. Someone tried to stop her, telling her to stand back. She shook her head and kept moving. Inside the barn, smoke thickened. Two men went in, then rushed back out coughing, unable to see. The heat was intense. The fire climbed higher. People began to step away, fear taking over. She stepped forward. Without a word, she tied a cloth around her face, dipped it in water, and gestured to the men. She pointed to the side entrance where the fire was weaker. She waited only a moment, then went in first. Those watching felt something shift. This quiet woman they had judged for months was now leading without saying a single word. Inside, visibility was poor. The air burned her lungs. She moved low, remembering to stay near the ground. She found the first animal and cut the rope holding it. She guided it toward the exit, pushing gently, urging it forward. When it stumbled, she steadied it. She did this again and again, her body moving on instinct. Outside, people followed her lead. Buckets moved faster. Lines grew straighter. Fear turned into action. The fire was still dangerous, but now there was order. By the time the flames were brought under control, several animals had been saved. The barn was damaged, but not lost entirely. Smoke drifted away into the morning sky, leaving behind exhaustion and shock. She sat down on the ground, her hands trembling now that the danger had passed. Soot marked her face. Her clothes smelled of smoke. Sam knelt beside her, his eyes filled with something close to awe. She looked at him and nodded once as if to say she was all right. People stared. Not with suspicion this time, but with confusion and respect. No one had expected this from her. No one had imagined that silence could carry such command. Later that day, news spread through Red Hollow. People spoke of how she had moved, how she had seen what others missed, how she had stepped forward when words failed everyone else. Her name was spoken more often now. Her silence was no longer the main topic. Her actions were. A few days later, another moment came. An illness passed through town, quick and sudden. Several people fell sick at once, overwhelming the small clinic. Panic rose again, though quieter this time. She heard about it and went without being asked. At the clinic, she helped clean, organize, and calm those waiting. She brought water, changed cloths, and sat beside the weak through long hours. She did not speak much, but her presence eased fear. When someone cried, she held their hand. When someone rested, she stayed nearby, watchful. One night, an older woman grew worse. The doctor had stepped out briefly. Family members stood helplessly, their voices tight with worry. She noticed small changes others missed, the shallow breathing, the cooling hands. She acted quickly, calling for help, adjusting the bedding, doing what she could until the doctor returned. The woman survived. After that, people began to look at her differently. They greeted her more gently. They stopped pushing her to speak. They thanked her, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes with tears. She accepted it all quietly, the same way she accepted everything else. Sam saw the change too. He noticed how people made space for her now, how they waited instead of rushing her. how they watched her not with doubt but with trust. At home, he felt a new closeness, not built from conversation but from shared understanding. One evening, as they sat together after a long day, she spoke more than usual, just a few sentences. She thanked him for never forcing her to be someone else. Her voice was steady, honest. He listened fully. The town of Red Hollow did not become perfect overnight. Some people still struggled to understand her, but something important had shifted. Silence was no longer seen as emptiness. It was seen as a different kind of strength. And she remained the same, quiet, observant, steady. She did not seek praise. She did not explain herself. She simply continued to live, letting her actions speak in moments when words were not enough. The town had finally heard her. Spring returned to Red Hollow slowly, as if the land itself was careful not to rush. Snow melted into soft earth, and the fields began to breathe again. With the change in season came a quiet change in the town as well. It was not sudden or loud, but steady, like the woman who had become part of it. People no longer watched her the way they once had. The sharp curiosity was gone. In its place was something gentler. When she walked through town now, heads still turned but not with doubt. There were nods of respect, small smiles, and moments of understanding that did not need words. She noticed the difference, though she never spoke of it. She moved through her days the same way she always had, calm, thoughtful, observant. She still spoke little, but now no one pushed her to say more. The town had learned that listening did not always mean hearing words. Sam felt the change deeply. For the first time since her arrival, he felt at ease bringing her into town, sitting beside her at gatherings, standing quietly with her among others. No one questioned her place anymore. No one questioned his choice. At home, their life softened. They shared small routines that slowly became meaningful. Morning tea by the window, evening walks along the fence line, simple meals eaten without hurry. Silence still filled the house, but it no longer felt heavy. It felt shared. Sometimes she spoke more now, not long stories, not explanations, but small truths. She spoke of liking the way the light fell across the fields at dusk. She spoke of enjoying the sound of rain on the roof. Each sentence felt like a gift, offered freely because it was safe to do so. Sam never interrupted her. He never asked for more than she gave. The town changed too. People became more patient with one another. They noticed small things they had ignored before. They learned that not everyone showed strength the same way. Children, especially, watched her closely. They saw how she helped without being asked, how she stayed calm when others panicked, how she treated everyone with quiet fairness. One child asked her once why she did not talk much. She smiled and said, gently, that listening was also a way of caring. The child thought about that for a long time. There were still whispers now and then, because no town ever fully loses its habit of talking. But the whispers had lost their sharpness. They were softer, less certain. Respect has a way of changing the tone of a place. One afternoon, the town gathered for a small event near the church. Nothing special, just food, music, and shared time. Someone asked her if she wanted to say a few words. The request was careful, respectful. She paused. For a moment the old fear stirred. The habit of silence pulled at her. Then she looked around, at faces no longer demanding, only open. She took a breath. She spoke briefly. She thanked the town for giving her space. She said she was not always good with words, but she was grateful for kindness. Her voice was steady, her accent still soft. When she finished, there was quiet. Then gentle applause, not loud, not forced. She nodded once and stepped back. That night, as she and Sam walked home under a sky full of stars, she felt something loosen inside her. Not everything from her past was healed. Some memories never fade completely, but she no longer felt invisible. She no longer felt like she had to protect herself by disappearing. Sam reached for her hand. She took it. The town of Red Hollow continued on as towns do. Crops grew. Seasons changed. New challenges came and passed, but something remained different. People had learned that strength does not always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives quietly, waits patiently, and reveals itself only when needed most. Her silence had once made the town uncomfortable. Now it reminded them to slow down, to observe, to consider before speaking. It had taught them that not every story needs to be told out loud to be true. She never became a loud voice in Red Hollow. She never needed to be. Her presence was enough. Her actions were enough. And in the end, the town understood that some of the most powerful stories are written not in words, but in the steady, quiet choices a person makes every day. Her silence had spoken, and Red Hollow had finally learned how to listen.